She justifies not having sex by citing philosophy. Have you ever considered how our most ardent desires and passions can influence our mental and inner tranquility today, as we explore a subject that is frequently shrouded in stigma and misconceptions, but also serves as a catalyst for many sex relationships? However, pause before drawing any hasty judgments. This video is not meant to be a guide on how to have a better sexual life. On the contrary, let's explore some daring and thought-provoking philosophical arguments for not having sex. So settle in, switch your mind to philosophical mode, and get ready for a conversation that will question your assumptions, make you reevaluate your behavior, and perhaps even point you in the right direction. Less traveled but more enriching. Prepared for the challenge? Let's go there first. Friends, let's start our exploration of Stoic philosophy with a basic idea that each of us can immediately apply to our own lives: self-control. I am aware that our culture frequently encourages us to act on our impulses and do what feels right at the time, but let me tell you something. The Stoics, with their emphasis on self-discipline, teach us that we are not simply animals driven by our desires. We have the ability to reason, choose, and control our actions. Do you know what the true power of an individual is? It's not how much pleasure you can get, but how much self-control you can exercise. Imagine having the kind of self-control that allows you to make decisions completely aligned with your values and life goals. That's pure power. Although sex is one of the most intimate and enjoyable experiences of your life, it is also one of the most potent in its ability to alter our rationality and self-control. Friends, and sure, skipping out on sex can be a good way to practice self-control. It doesn't mean that sex is bad, but it can teach you a lot about your motivations, desires, and ultimately, who you are as a person. By controlling that impulse, you're also improving your ability to control other impulses and distractions that might be preventing you from achieving your greatest life goals. The key is intention. If you're going to do anything, even something as natural as sex, do it fully aware of your motivations and their long-term effects. Repercussions when you practice restraint. The next time you find yourself in a situation where self-control is required, remember that you have the strength within you to make a choice. That choice, my friends, can be the first step toward living a more stoic, meaningful, and ultimately more rewarding life. Second, detachment from fleeting pleasures. Take charge of your life and stop being a passenger driven by desires and circumstances. If the first point had you thinking, be ready because we're going to dig even farther into the insightful lessons of Stoic philosophy this time around. We'll be discussing attachment to fleeting pleasures, the idea that pleasure is good and that we should pursue it at all costs and avoid pain is something that modern society constantly inundates us with. However, have you ever considered how long pleasure actually lasts? Often it is ephemeral, disappearing almost as soon as it appears, leaving us yearning for more. The Stoics teach us something very different. True peace and happiness come from detachment from not allowing our emotional well-being to depend on things that are beyond our control. Yes, even sexual pleasure. Being detached from fleeting pleasures does not mean that you can't still enjoy life's pleasant things. Rather, it means that you avoid letting them control your behavior or way of thinking. Detachment is a powerful tool that can help you transform your life. It won't make you a person devoid of emotions or desires, but rather an individual who has a deep understanding of what truly matters. When you achieve self-mastery, you'll find a much more meaningful and long-lasting satisfaction than any fleeting pleasure could. Are you ready to begin practicing detachment and break free from the cycle of fleeting pleasures? Realizing that you have the ability to choose is the first step toward achieving what I know you can do. Select, choose control, and the freedom that comes with separation wisely. Third, concentrate on long-term objectives. We have discussed the significance of exercising self-control and separating ourselves from fleeting pleasures. Now, we must confront an equally revolutionary reality: the significance of concentrating on long-term objectives. Consider the great Stoic philosophers Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. They were dedicated to values like wisdom and weren't seeking for instant fulfillment. What makes a long-term goal essential are justice and courage, which are goals that require a lifetime to develop. When we are caught up in the pursuit of immediate pleasures, we lose perspective on what truly matters. But when we focus on long-term goals, we change the entire game. Suddenly, you're not stuck in the endless cycle of wanting, getting momentarily enjoying and then wanting more. Instead, you are on a path with a sense of direction, a path that leads you toward the best version of yourself. Now, focusing on long-term goals doesn't mean you should ignore everything else. What it means is that your perspective changes. You stop being driven by what you want now and start moving based on what will be best for you in the future. And that has a powerful impact not only on the results you get but also on the person you become. In the process, this approach frees you from the emotional roller coaster that comes with seeking immediate pleasures. Instead, you find a much deeper sense of peace and contentment because you know you're working towards something that really matters. It's time for you to take inventory of your goals. Are they aligned with a long-term vision for your life? If not, maybe it's time to make some adjustments. And remember, long-term goals are like a beacon in the distance. You may not know exactly how you will get there, but as long as you keep your gaze on it, you will always have a direction in which to move. Fourth one, strengthen emotional relationships. After addressing the importance of focusing on long-term goals, it's time to take it a step further and talk about something we often underestimate: strengthening our emotional relationships. Yes, you heard correctly. If there is one thing that Stoic philosophy has taught us, it is that interpersonal relationships are essential to leading a well-lived life. Great Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus emphasize the value of social duty and empathy. We cannot live on our own. We are social beings by nature, and our relationships reflect both our best and worst traits. You may be wondering how this relates to abstaining from sexual relations in a Stoic manner. Well, by bolstering our emotional relationships, we avoid letting fleeting sexual desire cloud our judgment and lower the caliber of our interactions. In other words, while sex can be wonderful, if it becomes our main focus, we may overlook the subtleties and deeper focus on creating meaningful relationships by learning to give, listen, share, be vulnerable, and give without expecting anything in return. By doing this, you create a safe space for emotional growth in both yourself and those around you, which in turn strengthens your character and makes you a more emotionally resilient and balanced person. Don't you find it liberating to be freed from the never-ending cycle of disappointment and instant gratification? If you're ready to take your life to the next level, begin investing in your emotional relationships. Learn to love more completely, forgive more swiftly, and appreciate life more fully. The secret to living a full life filled with intense emotions is found in this investment. 5 ways to avoid unintended effects. Now is the time to discuss a somewhat more practical but still very important subject: avoiding unintended consequences. Yes, we are discussing issues that we frequently overlook in the heat of the moment, but that can have a long-lasting effect on our lives. Stoic thinkers have always emphasized the value of leading a moral life, and prudence is one of those virtues. When it comes to sex, being prudent means not only thinking things through before acting, but also thinking about the consequences of our choices down the road. These consequences can range from preventing STDs to avoiding complicated relationships, or in some cases, unintended pregnancies. Now, this is not to say that sex is bad. On the contrary, when it is not handled with the appropriate care and consideration, it can become a major source of complications. Instead, by adopting a more somber and reflective approach, you can assess whether the sexual act you are thinking about genuinely corresponds with your core values and long-term well-being. You can also ask yourself if this action will bring you closer to the person you want. These questions are more than just mental exercises. They are useful tools that assist you in leading a more deliberate and conscious life. Trust me, they have great power in averting undesirable outcomes, safeguarding both you and your partner, as well as strengthening your own character by increasing your awareness, taking greater responsibility, and ultimately bringing you closer to the Stoic philosophy of leading a moral and meaningful life. Primary, preserve mental lucidity. Now, let's discuss another important aspect of Stoic philosophy: preserving mental clarity. It's incredible how distracted we are by things all the time in the current society. stimuli that aim to deflect our focus, and certainly, having sex can be one of those stimuli. However, let's pause here for a second. The Stoics teach us the value of ataraxia, which is a condition of calmness and mental clarity devoid of emotional disturbances. When we let our sexual urges cloud our clarity, we may end up making rash decisions that not only negatively impact our emotional health but also divert us from our long-term objectives. This is because it is during this state that we find our best selves, when we are most capable of making more logical decisions in line with our core values. The key here is not to avoid sex or any other pleasure in life, but to approach it with a clear and conscious mindset. Is this the person I want to share an intimate connection with? Will this sexual act improve my life and that of my partner? Will it lead to me being happier in the long run? If you can answer these questions with a resounding and conscious yes, then you are on the right track. Let us remember that mental clarity is one of our most powerful tools in the search for a fulfilling relationship. Now is the perfect opportunity to discuss a topic that, despite its somewhat abstract nature, is fundamental to the lives of anybody who desires to live by Stoic principles. 7. Energy conservation. Energy conservation. In a society where we are expected to always be on, it is understandable that many of us feel burned out. Yes, sex uses energy just like any other human activity does, but the important question is whether that energy is being used for long-term benefits or is it just being spent momentarily. Enjoyments, in other words. It is important that we think about where we are spending our life energy. Are we putting it into activities that foster our personal growth, strengthen our relationships, and contribute to our peace of mind? Or are we wasting it on instant gratification that leaves us empty and exhausted? Stoics are big proponents of channeling our energy effectively and directing it toward actions and goals that really matter. When a sexual act does not align with our deepest values and goals, it can be a drain of energy. Instead, it is sometimes preferable to save our energy for higher goals, such as a life project that demands our whole attention, or a relationship that needs to be nurtured with love and care, rather than consumed by transient relationship. Impulses betting on energy conservation is not a call to abstinence, but rather an invitation to be more mindful of how and with whom we share our vital energy, because in the end, energy is limited and requires time and effort to replenish. You are the owner of your energy. Either you will waste it or you will wisely use it to create a life that truly speaks to your authentic self. Therefore, take control, save your energy for what truly matters, and continue on the path to a life full of meaning and purpose. Steer clear of emotional reliance. In this 8th point, we'll discuss a subject that not many people dare to discuss but is really important: emotional reliance. The Stoic philosophy emphasizes the value of eiki, which is the ability to be emotionally and mentally self-sufficient in the pursuit of a well-lived life. This is where sex can become a double-edged sword, particularly if it turns into a means of obtaining attention, love, or validation. Yes, sex can be a beautiful experience and a form of meaningful connection with another person, but when it turns into our only means of obtaining these things, we become emotionally dependent on the person. This is not the path to emotional freedom that the Stoics advocate. To put it in Stoic terms, you need to first cultivate your own inner garden. You need to know that you are enough on your own, and that you have the power and ability to create happiness and meaning from within. Why put the key to your happiness in someone else's pocket? Why allow your inner peace to depend on something as volatile as another person's attention or affection? It's a risky bet that will most likely leave us disappointed. By doing this, any relationships you have will enhance your already fulfilling life, rather than be a requirement for it. Put your full attention on developing a solid relationship with yourself before seeking it out in other people. Make a list of your strengths. Recognize your strengths and address your weaknesses, not to satisfy someone else, but to develop and mature as a person. Keep in mind that avoiding emotional reliance does not mean avoiding people relationships. It's about having the discernment to know how best to focus our emotional energy and the fortitude to refuse to allow other people's behavior or sentiments to control our inner serenity. 9. Enhance self-esteem. Currently, we will address a subject that is closely related to anything we have covered thus far: self-esteem. It's easy to feel good about ourselves when things are going well, but the actual test of self-esteem is how we feel when things get difficult. Simply put, self-esteem is the durable, robust image you have of who you are at your core. The Stoic philosophy reminds us that, while it may provide momentary gratification and a brief boost in our self-esteem, sex and other fleeting pleasures are not a practical means of boosting our self-esteem because, after the moment passes, we are either back where we started or, worse still, we feel a void that seems even bigger than before. How can someone raise their sense of self-worth from a Stoic standpoint? It starts with self-awareness, which is fully recognizing who we are, our talents, and our flaws. Rather than looking for approval from others, we should create our own internal success and satisfaction measures. This entails living by values like intelligence and courage. Living by these values will make you more respectful of yourself and a person that other people will value and respect as well. Justice and self-discipline. Enhancing one's self-esteem is an ongoing process of self-discovery, rather than a final goal. Introspection and personal development. We've come to the end of this amazing journey through the Stoic reasons to consider sexual abstinence as a conscious choice. But before we do, I want to talk to you about something fundamental that is important, not only for this topic but for life in general: respect for your own value. When you follow the path of Stoic philosophy, you realize that you don't need ephemeral pleasures to validate your existence or make you feel good about yourself. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where you're tempted to use sex or any other pleasure as a way to feel better about yourself, pause, breathe, and remember that your value does not come from passing experiences, but from the solid and virtuous character that you are building every day. Fundamentals. One of the most precious gems of Stoic philosophy is its emphasis on living in accordance with nature, which includes adhering to a solid set of values and principles. This is not the kind of treasure you can find in fleeting pleasures. It's something you build day by day, decision after decision. Imagine yourself in a situation where you feel pressured, whether by your partner, friends, or even société de compromise, your personal values regarding sex. The Stoics would tell you stop, reflect, act according to your principles, not according to the expectations of others. When you give in to external pressure, you are not only being unfair to the other person by not giving them your authentic self, you are also being unfair to yourself. Living according to your values and principles gives you a kind of armor. It is not a barrier that isolates you from the world, but rather a filter that helps you interact with the world in a more meaningful and authentic way. Allow your decisions, including those related to sex, to be. This method enhances your general well-being and makes any relationships you have richer, deeper, and more linked. If you ever find yourself at a crossroads, keep this principle in mind. Clear reflections of who you are and what you value most. Take a moment to reflect on the choice that most closely reflects your principles. By doing this, you not only show respect for yourself, but also set the bar for honesty and sincerity in others. I appreciate you coming along on this journey with me to see how Stoic wisdom might improve our comprehension of relationships and sex. We've taken a less traditional route together today, exploring how Stoic philosophy can influence our decisions about something as intimate and personal as sex. But let us not forget that the essence of Stoicism is not to limit ourselves, but to free ourselves from irrational impulses, from society's approval, and from everything that does not align with our deepest values and principles. Every point we've discussed is a step towards a fuller, more conscious and authentic life. Final reflection: incredible true. Sometimes we forget to ask ourselves important questions while we're seeking emotional connection or pleasure. Will doing this action result in long-term well-being, or is it just a transient thrill? Am I currently violating my moral principles? Am I truly participating in this experience, or am I only a spectator? If there is one thing you should remember after watching this video, it should be this: you are not alone in your quest for self-awareness and self-realization, and every deliberate decision you make based on sound principles will bring you one step closer to living the kind of life you envision. As we go forward, let's never forget that we are the architects of our own lives. The plans are in our hands, and the lines we draw will reflect our values rather than those of others. I appreciate you coming and allowing yourself to be open to new ideas. Until the next time, remember to live consciously and stoically. And if this content has touched you, made you think, or even somewhat changed your life, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel and share it with others who might find it useful.